Hi there, Ron from RJM Music here once again. This week in Mastering the Mastermind, we're going to talk about button groups. We talked about this a little bit last week, but there's a lot more to it than we had discussed before, so we're going to go a little deeper into this. So what button groups are is the ability to take instant access buttons and group them together so that turning one button on in the group turns off the other buttons in the group, basically making it so that only one button can be on at any time. In computer speak, this would be called radio buttons, but I'll demonstrate it here. So let's go to the Buttons tab. I should mention this works the same on all the Masterminds, PBC, GT, LT. The options are exactly the same on each one. So let's start here. And we'll work with these instant access buttons. Let's throw out an example, and I know that customers have used this before, but let's say we have a loop switcher and we've got, say, 3 overdrive pedals in the switcher's loops, and we only ever want to use one at a time. And so it'd be cool if we turned on one overdrive, the other overdrives would automatically turn off. So let's take loops 1, 2, and 3 here. And we'll open up the first one and set group number to 1. Notice there are 12 groups. Each one of those will be independent from the others, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. But we'll go to loop 2, also set it to group 1, and loop 3, group 1. So now we've grouped them. If we go over to the Presets tab, you can see that, well, first of all, one of them is on, and if I click 1, 2, or 3, it turns off the other ones. Now, other IA buttons are independent and you can just mess with them all you want and they just turn on and off and they're unaffected. But because these ones are grouped, turning one off turns the other ones, or turning one on turns the other ones off. And like in the previous videos, we have this set up so that the buttons are programmable per preset. So if, say, we could say for preset number 1, loop 2 is on, and preset number 2, loop 3 is on, and preset 3, loop 1 is on, and it will remember those changes and turn them on automatically. Okay, well, easy enough. Now we have a problem here that, well, what if we don't want overdrive? That's likely you wouldn't want it on all the time. So we start looking at this global tab here, and at the bottom we have button groups, and this is where we can set up options for each group. And group 1 is the one that we were working with, and you'll see we can name this just so we remember what it is. And we'll call it overdrives, and there are 2 options here, and there's allow all buttons off and send off messages. Allow all buttons off is what we're looking for here. If we turn this on, it allows you, going to the Presets tab here, if you click the button that's on a second time, it will turn off. And so now we're not forced to have one on. We still can't have more than one on, but we could either have 1 or 0 on. And so in a case like this is probably what we would want. So now let's start up a second group. And let's say we'll go over to devices and we'll set up we'll say just a Strymon timeline pedal. And let's say that we only have 3 presets on this timeline that we ever use, 3 different delay presets, and we just want to be able to select between them easily. And so we can go over to our buttons tab here, and let's just use buttons 8, 9, and 10 here. And so we can open this up, and we're going to change what it does. We'll call this one short delay, and we'll change this so we want to send a program change message to the timeline pedal, and we'll just say that we want program change number 1 being sent to the timeline when we press this button. And we want these buttons to be grouped as well. We're going to group this with group 2. We don't want the timeline buttons to interfere with the overdrive buttons. We can now go to the second one here and do something similar. We'll go to group 2 and we'll just simply call it medium delay. And we want to send a program change to the timeline again, and we'll send program change 4. And finally, group 2, program change, timeline, and we'll say it's program number 17. Okay, so now going over to presets, you can see we once again have one of these turning on automatically, and you'll see these 3 are now, I guess I forgot to name this button. We'll fix that quickly just so we know what we're talking about. Okay, back to it. So now these 3 buttons are grouped together. Notice again, they don't change any of the other buttons, and changing the overdrive buttons don't change the timeline buttons, and vice versa. And so that's why we have different groups, so we can have different groups of buttons that are related to each other, but not related to the other groups. Once again, we may not want these buttons to be on. We might not want any of the buttons to be on, so we can go to group 2 here, which we'll call timeline. And, oops, if I spelled it right, that would be better. And we can say allow all buttons off. So there's one other thing we need to look out for here. Let's say we have a preset where we have our short delay on, and then we have a preset with a medium delay on. What's going to happen when the GT switches from preset 1 to preset 2? 2 things happen, right? It isn't just that this button turns on, but it's also that this button turns off. And so what happens is that this button is going to send, if we go in here and we look at it, it says that it's going to, when the button is turned on, it's going to send program change 1, and when the button is turned off, it's going to send program change 0. Likewise, this other button, when the button turns on, it sends program change 4, and when it's turned off, it sends 0. So when you go in here and select a preset, and you go from preset 1 to preset 2, this button turns off, so it will send program change 0, and this button turns on, and it'll send program change 4. That's fine, because the one that you want, program change 4, is going to be send second. It's going to have priority, and your timeline is going to end up on the preset you want. Now, when we switch back to preset 1, this one is going to send program change 1, and then this one, because it turned off, is going to send program change 0. So you're actually going to end up on program change, or program 0, which is not what you want. So to avoid that problem, we have another setting here, and that is send off messages. And so when this is turned on, it does what we said, that it basically will, the button that turns on will send its messages, and the button that turns off will send its messages. If we turn off that checkbox simply, then only the delay, or only the button that is being turned on will send its messages. And so in a case like this, where we're sending program change messages to a device, that's what we want. Now on your overdrives, you wouldn't want that setting, because what would happen is I'd switch from one preset to the next, and it would not turn off loop 1, it would just turn on loop 3. And so of course that's a problem. And so that's why these options exist, because you might be using groups for different purposes. Okay, and so there's one other thing to consider with these groups, and it's like, well, this is great. I can select presets on my timeline, and I can even turn these off, but all that really does is send different program changes to the device. It doesn't actually turn the timeline on or off. And so let's add one more feature so that we can disable the timeline. The timeline is of course, a MIDI controlled device, and you can just send it a message to tell it to bypass itself. And so we can work that in with another option. So that's why we have this whole action section here, group actions. And what we'll do is we'll add an action to the timeline group, and it will be a CC toggle to the timeline, and we'll go select CC, and you can look for bypass. Okay, and so we select that. And so now what happens is it's going to automatically do something for us. It's going to, well, we'll go here. It's basically what happens is when we go from a preset that has one of these buttons on to a preset that does not, it's going to basically turn the whole group off. And so it's going to go and send this bypass message to the timeline and actually disable the pedal. If we go from a pedal, or if we go from a preset that has 0 buttons on in the group to a preset that has 1 button on in the group, then it's going to go and send this message and send the on value, which is going to unbypass the pedal and turn on the pedal. And so that, it's a really nice integration between those two. So if I go, going from preset 1 to preset 2, even if they change from one delay to another, it's not going to turn the entire group on or off, and so the pedal will remain active. But then as soon as we go to a preset where there is no button active, that group action is going to trigger, and it's going to bypass the pedal, and then well, just doing what you want it to do. And then automatically, when you go to a preset where where a button's on, it's going to turn on the pedal for you and select the medium delay preset. And so that is all there is to button groups. You can set this up. Groups can span different pages. You can have as many buttons as you want in the group, and currently there are 12 groups available. So if there are any questions, certainly feel free to post them in the comments section, and we'll hope to we will hopefully address them in later videos. As always, like, subscribe, and all that. And please keep watching. We'll be having more of these videos every week. Thanks very much.